Hey! Cast your eyes on this. You might like this. What do you think, eh?
There has been a surprising amount of people that have come and asked me, Random, what is exactly the best armor setup? Or is there any way I can actually mix these in a very good armor setup? And there's been a surprising few amount of people that have actually asked me this, and here I sat down and I'm like, well, it's obvious, just grab whatever you like and whatever you're comfortable with, and as well as what is your favorite one, and that's pretty much it. But apparently, no, that's not enough, so I'm forced to make a video, and here I am. Hello and welcome. Today I'm going to be talking about every single armor as well as what is exactly the best way you can combine them into a singular armor setup. So the way this video is going to work is I'm going to grab an armor class, rank them by how effective they are on themselves, and as well as if it's combined with other armor setups. And that's pretty much it, and I'm also going to be explaining how you can mix and match these two together, or every single armor there is in the game. So without wasting any more time, let us get straight into it. The most useless armor class in the game is by far being the Ranger one, because of simply providing a damage increase to both crossbows and as well as bows. The increased damage towards ranged weapons does not apply to guns and as well as on throwing weapons, as far as I'm aware. I didn't really notice anything different, so yeah. The only time it actually affects it is through bows and crossbows. Bows are entirely useless without different types of ammo. The basic arrow that they have is literally useless. But the only good ammo type that you can actually put on the bow is the shocking arrow, because of its capability of applying its elemental effect to other enemies without having any problems. It's basically a crowd control type of ammunition, and that's the only one you should really be focusing. And maybe, just maybe, the explosive one, but that's pretty much it. Crossbows are, in my opinion, an amazing weapon that is able to kill enemies without having any problems whatsoever. If you have the highest damage increase on ranged weapons, which is about, I think, 80 if I'm not mistaken, you are actually able to one-shot virals in the body and as well as 5-shot volatiles in the head, or 4-shot them in the head if you're accurate enough. This is one of those weapons where it has a lot of skill ceiling to it, but if you're able to hit headshots without having any problems, then it is a very powerful weapon, if not better than most of the guns. It can slightly be better than shotguns, but, you know, I'm not going to dive deep into that much topic, so yeah. And finally, the other stats that it provides is literally useless. Recognition time is not good, survivor sense increase and as well as duration is not really good, yada yada yada. The only good thing about it is the stamina reduction towards parkour and as well as on ranged weapons, but that's pretty pointless. So yeah, the only one you should really be focusing on is on damage increase towards ranged weapons, and that's pretty much it. On its own, Ranger is useless, and even when it is combined with other ones, it's not really that particularly good, because it provides the least amount of resistance, and as well as it doesn't provide any damage resistance towards a specific enemy or during a specific timeline. That's pretty much it. But then again, I'm not saying like it's useless. You can actually combine these very well with the tank. So here it is. The best way you can combine these two together is the head, body, and as well as the arm guard should always be archer, because that's the only place it actually gives any sort of resistance. The gloves, holy shit, that was a terrible voice crack. The gloves, the pants, and as well as the shoes should always be tank, because, well, those are the places that the tank provides bonus armor, so you get solid enough resistance from tank and as well as a solid amount of resistance from the ranger outfit, and as well as having some good amount of damage increase to two-handed weapons and as well as on ranged weapons. The same thing also applies to Brawler. Just apply the same shit as I said for the tank. There's really not much difference between the two, so yeah. Do not combine with Medic because it is entirely useless. That's it, that's all I can pretty much say. But if you want to combine them, then just use the same way as the tank, because the medic actually provides a damage increase towards both night and day. So only apply to either on the legs, gloves, and as well as on the feet. Or you can just apply it anywhere because they give out the same amount of armor, so it doesn't really matter, just put it whatever the fuck you want. Like, there's no right or wrong. Medic is by far a unique class, but it's actually sort of useless on its own. But when it comes to comparing to other classes, it is very effective, not because of its capability of increasing your healing, but as well as increasing your parkour attacks damage. But unless you're someone that like actually loves doing parkour attacks, then this is pretty much forgettable. But oh well. The medic is the third tankiest armor set in the game because it actually provides a damage resistance to both day and night, and that's pretty much it. That is of course if you're lucky enough to get those, and that's it. The only stats that you really should be focusing on with the medic class is damage resistance either during the day or night, healing effectiveness, and as well as maybe even focus on regeneration speed. But then again, I didn't notice any sort of different with regeneration speed, so I could be very wrong about that one, so here it is. Because of its healing effectiveness. And trust me when I say this, the healing effectiveness, regardless if you have 6 medic pieces or even 3 pieces, it is actually able to heal you for a pretty good amount of health. This is perfect for whenever you don't have your medicine set at max level, or when you're struggling to craft any sort of medicine, like you're struggling to have more in your inventory. But even when you do have max medicine in your inventory, they're still very effective as it's able to heal half of your health without any problems, if not even more.
Fighters have started dying in Carnage Hall.
So the same thing also applies with the tank as well as with the brawler combinations. Head, body, and guard should always be medic. Gloves, pants, and as well as shoes should always be on the brawlers. Unless you want more damage increase from brawler and as well as on tank, then I highly suggest replacing the body with either tank or pardon me, you should either replace either the head, the body, or even the arm guards as one of them into either tank or brawler. You get good enough resistance from both the medic and as well as brawler and tank, and as well as you get a really good amount of damage increase to one-handed weapons or two-handed weapons, and as well as a pretty good amount of healing effectiveness. And as well as parkour attacks, damage increase, but that is of course if you want to do them, of course. Medic is a very good skill outfit, but it's not really that much effective, to say the least. But again, I'm not going to complain much of it. Next up we have on the list is the good old Brawler. Brawler is the second best class in the game. First one being the tank, of course, like that's obvious. But yeah, it can be combined well with the other classes, and when it comes to combining with the tank, it can be very simplified because for some of you that don't know, the gloves is the only part where the ranger, medic, and as well as the brawler does not provide any sort of resistance whatsoever, or aka gear armor value. But the tank is the only one that is able to do that, so if you want to combine these two together into one, I would highly suggest doing this. The gloves, the head, and as well as the arm guards should always be tank, because body, head, and as well as the arm guards, the tank actually provides more gear armor value, a lot more than the brawler one, but for the legs and as well as on the body, they provide the same amount. You're doing like a 50-50 between the two. For one, you're getting a really good amount of resistance from both of these outfits, and as well as a really huge amounts of damage increase on both of your weapons, which is one-handed weapons and as well as two-handed weapons, a sort of 50-50. The maximum amount of damage that you're able to get is upwards to 40 damage increase. So, yeah. Tank do I really need to say anything about tank? It's literally the best class, the armor in the game. Huge damage resistance, huge damage increase. It focuses on two-handed weapons, which are pretty much the best weapon category in the game. Yada yada yada, you get the gist of it. There's really not much else to pretty much say about this one. So yeah, it can be combined in every way possible. Just sort of apply the same logic as I've explained in the previous armors into this one. Head, gloves, legs, and as well as feet on the tank, and then the head, arm guards, and body should be either on Ranger and as well as on the good old medic, and the same thing sort of applies to Brawler. But let's say theoretically, let's change the things up a bit. Let's change the things up a little bit. What if, for some miracles, we want to combine every single armor in the game, all into one big package? Well, I've got the perfect opportunity for you. So without wasting any time, let's get into it. So the gloves are the one thing that's never going to change, and it should always and forever be tank. And I have a very good reason for this. If you want the most amount of resistance, or you want to gain the most amount of protection from the enemies, then the gloves should always and forever be tank, because the tank is the only one that is able to provide resistance on the gloves. Not Brawler, not Ranger, and especially not the medic class. No shit, Shilla, because these fucking things looks like they're able to punch a fucking concrete and much more better boulders than Chris Redfield. Holy shit, people. But either way. So for the head, body, or even the arm guards should either have one or two medic and as well as Ranger pieces, but then again, that depends on what you want. Do you want more in damage increase on your bows and crossbows? Then go with two Ranger pieces and one medic piece. But if you want more resistance or more healing, then go with two medic pieces and one Ranger piece. But if you want to sort of do differently, then I highly suggest like going with one medic piece and as well as one Ranger piece. The head, body, and as well as the arm guard should be either one piece of each, like medic and as well as Ranger. The rest is all Brawler, because the Ranger and as well as the medic does not provide resistance on the legs and as well as on the feet. The Brawler should always be on the feet and as well as on the legs, because it actually provides a resistance. You can sort of put it on tank if you want, of course, because they provide the same amount of resistance, but here's what I'm thinking. The body and as well as the arm guards and as well as on the head, if you have space, if you have not put into those yet, it should be tank, because here's how it's going to work. Two tanks, two Brawlers, one medic, and as well as one Ranger. You get good enough of damage on every single weapon class, on everything. And as well, you get a really good amount of resistance from every single armor. And as well as you also get some pretty good different stats, like stamina reduction, healing effectiveness, and so on. But let's say you don't want the Ranger, as an example, or even the medic. Then that's up to you. Do you want more damage resistance? Go with tank. Do you want more damage increase or like sort of a different alternative? Go with either medic for more healing and as well as more damage from the Brawler. That's how I would sort of modify my armor, or sort of set up my armor. Is it complicated? Probably. But let's also step back a little bit and see when you should be using your weapons if you're combining all of these into one. Well, I have a very good situation. If you have Ranger in your armor setup, then I always suggest having some sort of a ability to freeze the enemies, because you want the enemies to be standing completely still in order to allow you to be able to shoot the enemies in the head. So having some sort of freezing modifications in any way, shape, or form is very effective, regardless if it's on a one-handed weapon, two-handed weapons, and so on and so on. Because the enemies are standing still entirely and standing up straight, this allows you to hit their heads very effectively and not having to constantly, you know, like changing your aim all the time, because they're constantly moving their head around as they're chasing you. So having them completely standing still is very good. So for Ranger, always have something freezing with you, and the only time you should really be using bows and crossbows is against human enemies if you're not comfortable dealing with them, and as well as other different types of infected like banshees, revenants, volatiles, and so on. If you're good with crossbows, use them on any enemy, because crossbows are powerful. When it comes to medic, just be careful. That's all I can say. Just heal. That's it. There's no like special strategy here where you have to do this, you have to do that. With the medic, you just simply have to heal yourself or your friends, and that's it. And maybe use parkour attacks more often, and that's pretty much it. Brawler, when you should be using one-handed weapons is a bit complicated. Because one-handed weapons deal very fast damage in a very short duration, I highly suggest using these against bigger enemies like goons, demolishers, and maybe even a volatile tyrant, because they're very effective against a singular target, but they're not good against whole hordes of enemies because they are able to bounce off of enemies for each time you hit them. So one-handed weapons should only be used against volatiles and as well as like bigger enemies like goons and demolishers because of their fast damage output, but it can also be used against human enemies, but it's not that much effective because whenever you hit an enemy that's like blocking your attack, it more or less just staggers you for a split second. It's not like the same thing with the two-handed weapon. They're able to barge through their defenses much more easily. What weapon should you be using? Machetes, axes are good against demolishers because of their higher damage output and as well as their faster swinging speed, but the axe has a slightly slower swinging speed than every single one-handed weapon, but that's not much of a problem. Machetes, axes are good against goons and demolishers or even the bigger enemies. Knives are perfect against volatiles because it has a very good damage output and as well as a very fast swinging, and as well as the sticks or bats and so on are good against human enemies because of their ability to stagger them much more often, allowing you to execute them. And when it comes to two-handed weapons, they're more or less effective if you're planning on fighting huge groups of enemies. So two-handed weapons having the ability to hit multiple targets without bouncing off is very good. But what about the other types? They're also very good, but you're more or less going to focus on two-handed weapons because of their wide swinging spread and as well as their huge damage output. So use them when you're in a pitch, like say in a dark zone or GRE lab during the day. But you should only also use it if you're surrounded by huge groups of enemies, because the two-handed weapons damage should not really be fucked around a lot. Sure, it can be used against like the bigger enemies, but consider the fact that one-handed weapons also have a fast swinging speed. It can help you a lot, but with the bigger range that two-handed weapons have, you're able to sort of position yourself the right way and still without any effort dodge hits without having to, you know, get too close to them. The only problem I can say about one-handed weapons is you have to get very close to them to hit your targets. This does not apply the same thing with two-handed weapons. But what type of weapon you should be using? You are allowed to use knuckle dusters and as well as two-handed weapons, polearms, and long weapons. Long weapons are sort of like both the katanas and as well as long blunt weapons are just sort of the one-handed sticks, but have bigger range and more damage, and that's pretty much it. So only use it against human enemies, sort of. But use whatever you want, because every one of them is overpowered. Long weapons are better than one-handed weapons, two-handed weapons are better than one-handed weapons, polearms are also the same thing, and knuckle dusters are just a better version of the knife. Yeah, sort of, but either way. Just use whatever you're comfortable with. There's really nothing right or wrong with this one, so, yeah. I hope you enjoyed this video and found this very useful. Now, if you excuse me, I'm going to go and drink some uranium and try to calm myself down, and as well as stop a civil war from happening very time soon, because I done goofed something up. So, yeah, grab your boys, I don't know, just do something, mix and match, I don't know, go to like a fashion show or some shit. I don't know, just do something with your friends, I don't know. Take care of each other, treat each other with respect, don't be an asshole to one another. Now, if you excuse me, I'm good to go. Goodbye, have a good day or night, depending on when this shit comes out, and I'll see you next time. Now, get out of my house.